Tonight, financial data sources confirm that global actors didn't just react rhetorically, they acted. They reduced dollar exposure. They lengthened non-dollar trade contracts. They strengthened local currency swap lines. They moved before the U.S. could reassert narrative control. They hit reserve composition. They hit settlement dominance. They hit financial plumbing that supports dollar supremacy. In other words, they targeted the infrastructure of monetary power, the component that makes the dollar indispensable. This is what made economists' warnings so urgent. The U.S. move wasn't symbolic, it was actionable. It represented the kind of policy choice that could accelerate de-dollarization if left unchecked. And the global response, understanding that fully, was strategic. Not emotional, not reactionary, but calculated. They didn't dump treasuries overnight. They didn't trigger collapse. They built exits. And this is where the story becomes even more systemic. According to critics like Yanis Varoufakis, the U.S. move was never just about inflation control or crisis management. It was about buying political time. Varoufakis has argued repeatedly that the U.S. operates a system where deficits are exported and crises are socialized globally. The printing press isn't just a tool, it's a mechanism of power. But power only lasts as long as others believe in it. The U.S. wanted to see whether the world would tolerate another cycle of monetary expansion without protest. Instead, the opposite happened. Global actors didn't revolt, they adapted, quietly, legally, incrementally. That response was so measured, so rational, that it sent the strongest signal of all. Confidence is no longer automatic, and that matters because reserve currency status is not written into law. It is rented day by day. As reports continued throughout the year, the scale of the shift became clear. BRICS nations expanded non-dollar trade settlement, reducing exposure. Asian central banks increased gold reserves at historic rates. Energy exporters priced more contracts outside the dollar system. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't collapse. This was monetary diversification. This was strategic hedging. And hedging is the one thing reserve currencies cannot afford to trigger. For every dollar injected, global trust absorbed a little more strain. Remember, the U.S. believed the dollar was irreplaceable. Alternatives were inefficient. Confidence would always return. But tonight, the opposite is happening. Alternatives are maturing. Inefficiency is being tolerated. And confidence is being questioned. What makes this moment so fragile and so revealing is that U.S. policymakers are acting under intense domestic pressure. Voters want stability. Markets want liquidity. Politicians want growth. And creditors want discipline. The Federal Reserve is balancing all of this while fighting inflation, debt service costs, and political scrutiny. And when policymakers in that position turn to the printing press, they're not acting from strength. They're acting from constraint. Official U.S. statements frame the move as temporary, targeted, and necessary. That's central bank language for, we had no better option. You don't hear that tone unless the margin for error is shrinking. Meanwhile, critics like Yanis Varoufakis continued to warn global audiences. He argued that monetary dominance without political reform is unsustainable. He warned that credibility, once cracked, rarely heals cleanly. These weren't sound bites. They were system-level warnings. Here's what makes the situation more concerning, along with U.S. expansion. China accelerated digital currency trials. BRICS discussed settlement frameworks. Regional blocs strengthened financial autonomy, all within the same period. When multiple actors prepare alternatives at once, it means something bigger is coming. Analysts now see three paths. One, the dollar adapts and remains dominant. Another, it slowly shares power. The third, it loses trust faster than expected. Today, the world began preparing for option 2 and hedging against 3. This is a test of credibility. The U.S. wants tolerance. The world wants stability. Markets want clarity. And history wants discipline. Sources say diversification is accelerating. They say confidence is thinning. They say the dollar is still dominant but no longer unquestioned, and that alone changes everything. As this year unfolds, more data will emerge. But what we know now is this. The printing press bought time. It avoided collapse, but it extracted a cost. What happens next depends on whether credibility is rebuilt or spent. And tonight, for the first time in decades, the dollar's dominance feels conditional. Markets are calm, too calm. And when markets are calm after massive printing, it means recalculation is underway. Because tonight, the world learned. Money is power, trust is currency, and no reserve lasts forever. This story is far from over. But tonight, one thing is clear. The dollar still rules, but it is no longer alone. And the clock is ticking.